So one of the downsides of computer-aided design tools is that they are not very well prepared for 3D visualization. For example, we have over here CATIA. I will import the case study part mesh, which is a lion. So we have the statue of a lion crushing a snake. And we see that the default color for the mesh will be controlled by the graphic properties, which is the color over here. If you want to enable some better looking materials, we can make use of the material section within CATIA. As we can see, we have some variety over here. So we have metal, we have fabrics, we have paintings, but in general, the total number of materials is quite small. It will be the same within the newer version of 3D Experience. So for example, if I would want to add the gold metal on this, I can just drag and drop the gold metal, put it on the mesh. Visually, the model will still look the same because CATIA by default will be set to shading, normal shading. But if I'm gonna go to shading with materials, we're gonna have that material appearing over here. We can do some changes for that. If I will go over here on the properties, we're gonna see that we can change the ambient, the diffusion, the specular, the roughness, but overall the changes that can be done to the material are quite small compared to other software. Also, we have quite a limited amount of materials. This is why some solutions like Keyshot will be better. But the main disadvantage is that Keyshot is not free, so you have to pay for that license. Now, let's take a look at the case study part, which is this lion crushing a serpent. We see the model is available on Sketchfab, was created by Rickster. And this represents a lion position over here. So this is in Denmark, in Copenhagen. If I will go over here, we're gonna see that this will be the art museum. If I position a street view for this, and let me just reposition so we can better see that statue. So we see the lion crushing the serpent, and this is the photogrammetry model obtained for this. We see that this was published 7 years ago, and this is has a CC attribution license. But we can download this model. Now, if you want to add this directly within a CAD software, we can make use of the OBJ file format, but CATIA will not properly load that. Solidworks newer version can do that, but you need 3D Experience to load OBJ with textures. But for example, we can make use of a newer format as GLB. We can have that downloaded. And this can be easily added to Blender. So I will just create a new scene over here, go to import. We're gonna see that we have the GLB file format. If I will go to downloads, search by date modified, and if I'm gonna go all the way to the back, we're gonna see the lion crushing a serpent. So this is quite a high detail model. We see 156 megabytes. And by default, we're gonna see that the viewport nothing happened, but we see the model loaded over here. That is because the model is not aligned to the center. So you're gonna see the model will be positioned over here. You can just press on the comma button on the numpad, and that will fit you to selected, which is the Sketchfab model. Now, if I will zoom towards this, we're gonna see that if I expand the product tree, so imagine that this product tree over here in Blender will be the same as the one you are familiar over here. Wait. We have the multiple meshes. I can select all of those, go over here within the viewport, right click, and I will choose join in order to merge all of those. Because by default, the model will look good with the texture that has been created and assigned by the user that created this. We see this metal texture. But since we have multiple meshes over here, if I will just apply a material with drag and drop from the top part of Blender Kit. So over here, if I will go for search material, we're gonna see this appearing. And for example, if I would want to add this grippy nerd metal to this, I can just right click on the element over here, or I can double click, and double click will assign. We're gonna see the red bar at the bottom, and that will be applied to the model. But as you can see, only some sections of the model will have the newly added texture, while the other one will still have the previous one. So therefore, in order to have a uniform texture for this, I will just select everything, and I will go over here to join. And now, if I will just apply the same texture again, because I press Ctrl Z several times to go back, over here, if the Blender Kit will not pop up automatically, you can just do a search. And we're gonna see for gold material, for example, we're gonna have 600 results, but sometimes you need to go back and forth between those. And the list should populate over here. So we see that these are the gold materials available. And now if I will, for example, select this gold material, that will be applied to the mesh. Now for each of the pre-existing material over here, we can also do a wide variety of changes. For example, if I will select this material, so this is the Tanterazzo tile, if I will apply this to the model, we're gonna see how those colored elements are quite small. So I need to zoom in a lot, and we're gonna see them applied on the mesh. If you wanna change the scale of that, we just need to go to the shading within Blender. Over here you can press again on numpad on the comma button to zoom to the selected element. And at the bottom within the shading editor, this will be open by default. We will have the possibility to change the scale. So we have the curve ramp over here where we add those color elements, and we need to change the scale value over here. So I can drag and drop this, so I can just move it to the left and to the right, and that will change that scale. For example, if I will type in 10 and I will zoom out, we're gonna see how those patches of color will be of different size. And if you want, we can make them a little bit smaller, for example 50, or we can make them very large. We can go with 0.01, for example. But as we can see, with such a low value, we're just gonna have the base color over here. So if I will go with 0.1, some color will appear, but again, they will be quite small. But starting from a scale of 5, we should have those positioned. Because initially we had, for example, just this section of the material applied to the whole mesh. We can always go back within the layout, and over here we can apply a different material. So you can either double click on this and that will apply, or with a single click as well. Or you can use the drag and drop. If you have multiple materials, you can select the element, drag and drop it onto the desired asset within the scene. So if you have multiple models, you can do this easily. We can also apply, for example, more complex materials, such as this one. We have a brown interior rusted metal, and this should have the following appearance on the model. So as we can see, if I will zoom into the sculpture, we're gonna see how well defined that material will be. So keep in mind that you can install Blender Kit for free. If you're gonna go on blenderkit.com, so this will be the website. So for the cookies, I will have those denied. You can just download Blender Kit, you install Blender, and afterwards you can make use of this without having to create any account. So this is the main advantage, because most of computer-aided design software such as CATIA, Solidworks, Fusion they don't have the best materials, but we can compensate by using a free tool like Blender. For example, within Keyshot, if I would want to use the same model, if I will go over here and we have the GLB file format within the download, but the main problem is that Keyshot, at least the version that I'm using, 9, will not be able to import GLB files. Therefore, from the website where I download the model, I could download the OBJ file. We see how that download is progressing now. We're gonna see the lion crushing a serpent OBJ. I will extract that archive. And afterwards, this will be the resulting folder. So we have the source, where again we have a zipped mesh. And I will have this extracted. This will be the lion mesh. And we are also gonna have a texture. And yeah, we're gonna see this will be the diffuse color. Now, within Keyshot, I can just drag and drop the lion. For the materials and structures, we can select that. So apply material from library that match sources. No, I will just have this imported. We're gonna see how the model will be positioned within Keyshot. It will need to be realigned. So let me just rotate this, let's see, on the z-axis. Afterwards, snap it to the ground. And now we're gonna have that positioned. If you wanna center on the object, you can go over here with right click, set camera target, and afterwards you will be able to rotate around the model. Now, since this is set to real-time rendering, every time within Keyshot that you're gonna rotate, you're gonna see that the model will take a little bit of time to stabilize, and all that noise should disappear. Now, if you would to apply the texture that we previously downloaded from that archive, I can go over here to this one, and this will be the JPEG file. I can drag and drop this, position it on the model, and this will go within the color section for this one. So we're gonna see that this won't have the UV mapping done, so the mesh will look a little bit off. Therefore, I will use this SMP, and we're gonna see if this will look a little bit different. In this case, it looks like the UV mapping for the OBJ file hasn't been properly applied, but we can make use of the materials within this. So, for example, this will be the rainbow color from Keyshot, but we see that overall the number of wood, for example, these are the default one from Keyshot. We see that they're not that quite, let's say, not that many options over here for wood. Again, if I would want to change the texture, I can go over here to the size, and I see that this is quite large, so I will go with something smaller, for example, 10. We're gonna see how that wood texture will look on the model. But in comparison, if I would want to add some wood texture over here within Blender, I can type in wood. We're gonna see that there are over 1700 textures available over here, and the same principle will apply. So just a simple click will start downloading the material and have it applied to the model. Afterwards, within the shading, we should adjust that scale. So if you want, we can just switch to different materials over here, and depending on your connection, this will download faster or slower, and we see that final output. While within CATIA, if I will go over here to the apply materials, if I would go, for example, for wood, these are the available options over here. So we have, for example, let's say Kingwood. I will select this, apply it to the model, and this is how the Kingwood material will look in CATIA. We see that the shading is quite basic. So we have some different gradient colors for the Kingwood. If I will go over here on the material properties, we're gonna see that we can change the material size. For example, 50, we'll position that multiple times. With 5, it will look like this. So initially that scale was quite large because the model has been imported at a smaller scale. I will go over here on information, select the model. We're gonna see that this only has 23 millimeters over here. So this is why you also need to adjust the material, just like we had to do that within Blender or KeyShot. So I hope that this is sufficiently, let's say, presented, so that I encourage you to install Blender and BlenderKit, since they are both free, and also Blender is also open source. And you can make use of a wide variety of materials over here. For example, even for more complex one like glass materials. For example, we have this glass texture that will look like this on the final model. In KeyShot also we have some glass materials that are quite interesting. But if I will jump over here within CATIA, if I will go for, let's say, other, you're gonna see that we have a mirror texture over here, we have plexiglass, and we have smoked glass. If I will apply the smoke glass over here, the texture will look like this. So we should also have this rendered to go a little bit closer to the final, let's say, visualization. I can go over here within Photo Studio, and we're gonna align this. I will leave the default background with the sky. If I will click on render, this will give us, let's say, the final look of the material applied in CATIA. So let's take a look at how that will look. Now, depending on the computer specifications, we're gonna see how that will render. But we see that CATIA is lacking real-time proper rendering, while the other softwares, even though they are set to GPU, so not to CPU, not GPU, so to the processor, they will be able to give us an update of the final output. So we can better visualize how our model would look with the applied texture. Now, okay. Now, since CATIA is rendering, this will move a little bit slower, since this is eating up all the resources. And we see how this is slowly computing, even though the resolution was the default one, so the one that I have on my desktop. Mainly CATIA will crop the inner resolution, so it will be less than Full HD, because the whole desktop is set to Full HD. And we see how that slowly progresses over here to give us a more realistic render. While within Blender, again, we can make use of the real-time texturing, and we can rapidly see how the models will look with a wide variety of models. And we see that even though CATIA in the background on my computer is working, I can still have the possibility to go over here in Blender and apply a wide variety of materials, and I can also visualize them quite fast. And the real-time preview will be very similar to the final output on the render. For this one, we see that it will load the model, but as soon as the model has been loaded, we have the possibility to visualize this. We can later add background light, because currently within the scene we only have one light source over here. If I would move this a little bit closer to our mesh, we're gonna see how that will start and influence the model. So this will be that light over here. We can go to the light properties, And we can also increase that, that power for that light. But for real-time visualization, not for final renderings, we can just go over here on Visualize with Material, and we're gonna see how those details will look like. For example, for plastic, since most applications will be maybe on metal and plastic parts, we're gonna see how many shaders for those will be available over here. So we have that downloaded, and now this should be applied. It takes a little bit longer since CATIA is rendering in the background and is eating quite a lot of the resources. And we see over here how slowly this will progress. So using the default settings, CATIA estimates that this is only 2% completed. And we see over here that we have to wait an estimated 2 hours just for this render. So I can just stop that, and we see the final output over here. So as I said, this is less than full HD. And as soon as I will rotate, CATIA will lose that, that real-time rendering that was done exactly from that camera alignment. Over here, if I would to set this to render, it will take, again, some more time to render, but we see that the real-time rendering within other software is much more superior to the one in CATIA. Okay, so I hope that you find this video useful. I will position a similar video over here on the left. I will add the Blender tips and tricks playlist to the top, so if you wanna get started with Blender, I highly recommend that you're gonna check that playlist. And I will also add a subscribe button to the right. So that's it. Thanks for watching.